Hey, what's up, guys? So I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough here on my new track called Division. It's a free download on my SoundCloud. Go ahead and check that out if you want to listen to the song. I'll post a link up in the description for the for SoundCloud, and it's a free download. So let's dive right into this. First up, we have the kick. And here's what the kick is doing. Okay. So there's the kick. And here's the processing that I did, which wasn't much of anything. Just a little bit of a low cut. And I'll show you what I did here with the LFO tool. It's a cool little trick. Just sent it to a little bit of some reverb as well. Let me turn all this stuff off, though. You can hear it's this stuff. Other than the reverb, it's not really doing a whole heck of a lot. Okay, so with the LFO tool on, what it's doing is every second kick is a little bit softer than the one before it. So it sounds a little bit more natural. And the reason I have it set up like that actually is because of the snare. So each time that the snare hits, the kick just ducks a tiny bit in volume to give the snare just a little bit more room. And I'll play those two together so that you can hear why I did that. So yeah, let me throw the reverb on so you can hear the difference. Okay, so the reverb just gives it a little bit of realistic qualities. And here's the reverb that I used for it. It's the Valhalla Vintage Verb. This snare ambience preset I absolutely love. And then I'll just mess with the decay depending on the track and depending on what kind of tail that I want on the reverb. Let me show you. Let me show you this so you can hear why I did this LFO tool here. All right, so it's subtle, but the kick just ducks down in volume just a little bit here when the snare hits, and that's all that's doing. When your kick and your snare hit together on your two, you get a lot higher peak in overall volume on your track. So watch, if I turn this off, it'll be a little quiet. Okay, now if I bring the snare in with that, now with that, okay, so you can see here on the meter how when I turned the LFO tool off, it was peaking at around -8.8. And when I turn that on, because I'm ducking that volume when the snare hits, it stays at a steady volume at, I think it was -10. Let me show you again. So without that on, sorry. And then with it on. All right, so the reason that I do that is to keep my level here more balanced. The kick, the click on the kick has got a lot of punch. It's where most of your volume is coming from with your kick. That's the highest peak in that sound. So when your snare, which is also a very snappy, clicky sound, when those two hit together, it peaks really hot, which, sometimes works. Sometimes you want that click of your kick to mix with the snare, and it makes the snare sound a little bit more robust. And on a lot of tracks, I'll do that. I'll just keep my kick at a normal volume, and I'll keep my snare at the volume, and I'll play them both together, and it sounds fine. On this track, I felt like it worked a little bit better by doing that. So it's just a nice little trick for you guys. What else we got? I've got this reverse kick thing going. That goes with this. Okay, and so all that is this kick, which is from the transfer pack, and I just reversed it, and I just did a little volume fade here at the end so you don't get the click of it at the end. And what that does is that kind of leads into your next, it leads into that next bar. With the snare, you can hear what it sounds like this. Okay. So again, nothing really on that, just low cut at 30 hertz. This kick is all the way over here. Just, it's a softer kick. It's the same kick as this one. I just have it at a lower volume. This one's at -15. This one is at 12, and I could automate the volume, but I feel like with quick hits, with quick changes, automation can't really keep up that well, at least in Logic. The automation is a disaster in Logic. I don't know. I think it's kind of disastrous in most DAWs, to be honest. It doesn't really read properly. I can put my automation points exactly spot on, and Logic will read it like a whole second earlier or a second later than it's showing, and it's really annoying. So instead of doing that, I just create a duplicate track, and I can change the volume on it that way. So that's all that is. Nothing special. Let's go over the snare. So here's the first snare. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a clap. No processing. Second one is this. Okay, so that one's just a little bit fuller bodied. And then the two together sound like this. Okay, so Now these I just have bust here. So both of these are being sent out to bus 20. And that's what this is comp track for the snares. And this is the processing that I have on that snare. So I have just a little bit of some EQing, just a low cut at 176 hertz. And I can turn this off and show you guys. Let me turn all this stuff off. EQ. Okay, so you don't notice a huge difference on that. It just helps leave room for the kick, and it leaves room for the bass, cleaning up all that low end that doesn't need to be there. And this is just some parallel compression, which I've gone over before in some of my previous ones, and here's the settings I have for that. Okay, so that just gives it a little bit more punch. This is that reverb again. Oops. Same one that I had the kick going to. Here's what that. All right. Now I have this. This is a great plugin from Native Instruments. Highly recommend this as a transient designer. I also have the Plugin Alliance one, the SPL Transient Designer, and the Attacker. Both of those kind of work the same as this. What I like about this one is that it's got this limiter on it. So it controls the volume even when you boost the attack. On a lot of transient designers, when you boost the attack, it boosts the volume. This controls that at the same time. And as far as I've noticed so far with using this plugin, I haven't gotten a lot of problems with distorting by boosting the attack really high and keeping the limiter on. For instance, with this, I've got this section automated right here in this chorus section for the plugin to turn on, and I boosted the attack all the way to 100 so that the snare stands out a little bit more, and I don't notice any bad artifacts or distortion or anything like that, which is great. I'll play it for you with it on so you can hear. So you can hear how it makes that a lot louder, and makes it a lot more snappy. It also brings out a little bit more of the reverb, which is totally fine for this part of the song, because I wanted that whole thing boosted louder, but I didn't want to boost the overall volume, because if I boosted the volume more, it peaked too hot on the master channel, and it triggers the compressor and the limiter a lot more when you boost the volume than just adding this on. It's very similar to adding, say, like the sausage fattener. It's kind of similar to that, except it's working strictly on just that transient. It's working on that peak. So it's a really cool plugin. I highly recommend it. But that's all I got going on that. Just a little bit of gain automation as well, just to boost the volume a little bit during this section. Let me play you all that together. Okay. What's next? It's just a little impact. Again, nothing special, just low cut. And what is this sample? Oops. Okay, so it's this VFX Impact 10. These are just the gains for automation purposes. And let's play this section with all that. Okay. Next up, I'll show you. Let me show you this impact real quick. It's the same thing as this one. All I've done, again, it's the same thing as this one. Same thing I did with the kick and the softer kick. It's just this impact, but it's boosted a little bit louder. It's the only difference. Because again, like I said, I have horrible issues with automation. The tom. Okay, so let me show you what that's doing. Okay, and that is just a sample. And it's two samples layered together. So it's this VEE percussion 35 and VES2 synth shot 134 F sharp. And the two layered together make that. I think all I did on this was I edited this right here, the spike on B. So this one down here, this is slot B, and I just boosted the transient on that. That's all I did on that. Here's the EQ for it. Let me turn this off. Okay, so you can hear how the EQ takes out a lot of that bassiness and that low end in it. it's a pretty bassy sound, and it really clashed with what the kick was doing, and it clashed with what this sub bass and this distorted bass were doing. The whole track just was really muddy in the low end section. So cutting out that low end of the sound really helps for the overall balance in the track. It sounds great without this. But in the context of the track, it sounds better like this. And you still get that low end feel in the track. And I just did the LFO tool to sidechain it to the kick. Sausage fattener. Does what it's supposed to do, just kind of fattens that up a little bit. And then just that same reverb. Okay, so you can hear how it's super subtle. I mean, I've got this set at -20. And you can really hear how much different that sounds with it being sent to the reverb bus. Even if you are just doing tiny amounts of reverb on things, it really does make a big overall difference. Okay, so now all that together. Okay, next up is the hi-hat. Hi-hats are nothing that special. VEH2 closed hi-hat 8. And the only thing I did is I added this stereo matrix to it. These are the settings. And here's what that sounds like. I'll turn off the EQ and this. I turn this off. So here it is, this is dry. The stereo matrix. You can hear how that really just widens that sound. EQ. So that makes a huge difference, this EQ. I EQ'd out all the low end, all the mids, and all I've got left are pretty much just highs. Cool. Now the reverb. Super subtle. And a lot of times I'll just use LFO tool to give my hi-hats a little bit of like that realistic movement. This time around I just edited the velocity. Sometimes if I use an audio sample and I don't put it through a sampler, I'll just use LFO tool, and I can automate LFO tool to duck volume in certain spots a little bit to give it that realistic movement. But if it's thrown in a sampler, I can just do that with the velocity. And so I've got each note set at different velocities to make it seem realistic. Okay, so you can hear how that velocity changes. These velocity changes make a big difference in how it sounds. For instance, if I put all these, let's put all these to 127. Okay, now listen. Right? Okay, so you can hear how that makes a huge difference. Now let's put all these together. Actually, you're only going to hear it all together here at the beginning without the reverse kick and without this impact. Cool. Okay, next up is this bass. And got a ton of processing going on this guy. So here's that bass. It's going to start off really quiet and build up. Okay, so let me show you what I've got going on this. There's a lot going on. Okay, so it's just a sample here. Okay, so it's this VUB1, which is, I can't even remember what pack that is. Oh, it's the Ultimate Bass. That's it. Vengeance Ultimate Bass. Root G. Because that is the key of my song. And then all I did is I set this loop on it so that it continually plays for a long note like that. Just keeps looping around. But it's super transparent. You don't hear it. I love, love, love this feature in this sampler. It's amazing. But that's all I did. Just did a little low pass filtering in here as well. And that is it as far as what I did in here. Now I've got this EQ. Here's what I did with the EQ. Let me start it here. Okay. Where is that automation? Okay, so here's the automation that's going on during. Okay, and you can hear how that really gives it some movement. Okay, and this low cut here is taking away some low end to leave room for this sub bass and for the kick. And what did I do with this? It's just boosting that section's gain, that frequency gain. Okay, what else did I use? So here's the distortion. Here, let me actually turn all these things off so you can hear what it sounds like without any of this stuff. Okay, so nothing on. It's just gonna put that on. That's fine. Let's do that. So annoying. Again, awesome automation in Logic. I can't stand it. Okay, so let me turn all these things on one by one. Okay, you can hear how that gives it some of that bassiness kind of back. Here's the Pro Q and what that's doing. Okay, so what I did on here, this frequency, the reason I took this out a little bit, about 2.5 dB, there's like a weird resonance in it. I'll show you by boosting it. Okay, so that just gets rid of that weird resonance that I was hearing in it. Then the flanger. Game is just automation. Okay, so that's all the processing on that. And then all this is doing here is just a pitch bend down at the end. Nothing crazy. And all together. Okay, so I should also suggest, as always, listening in headphones or good monitors, you're going to hear a lot of these changes a lot more than you would just listening on your computer speakers or your laptop speakers. Sub bass. Intro, it's doing the same thing as this. Just kind of fades in. Okay, you won't hear this on laptop speakers or computer speakers probably. You're going to really need headphones or monitors to hear this. And here's what I did for it. So here's that patch. That's really about it. No envelopes except for this one. That's what that one's doing. So you can copy these settings if you want. And let me turn all these off. You can barely even hear that. Okay. So it's just like a nice kind of rumbly sub bass. It's pretty low in the mix, pretty quiet. But you can hear how when I added all these things in, it really brought out a little bit more of the kind of grittiness in the sound, a little bit more warmth in the sound. Let me play these two together. Okay, so you can really hear adding that in just gives this whole sound a lot more low end. And then all together. Next up is this Pluck. Okay, so let me show you what I got going on in this. Turn all this stuff off. Here's the sound just by itself. Here is the patch. This is the envelope that's going to this cutoff. Okay, so you can hear how this EQ really, really cleans up this sound. Without this on, I feel like the whole entire frequency spectrum is kind of just muddled. I like the sound, but it's just this sound is taking up way too much of the frequency spectrum. So these EQ settings just really kind of dialed this sound into the spot in the mix it needs to be. You can hear how much cleaner that sounds with this on. And then here is the compression set. Okay, that just kind of fattens it up a bit. This plugin is awesome. Such a great plugin. Highly recommend this. And here are the settings I use for this. Listen to what this does to the sound. Just makes it sound so wide, so huge. Okay, so right now with that off, it's right down the center. It's more kind of muddy sounding. With this on, it kind of widens it. It makes it crisper. Love that plugin. Just added this after that because I felt like it needed to cut some of that out a little bit more. Reverb. And then the delay. Here's the H delay. And I've shown you before in past tutorials about how I hate the ping pong setting on this. There's no way to kind of soften the ping pong. It's just hard left, hard right, hard left, hard right. I like a smoother transition between left and right with my ping pong, and so I use the tremolo. And here's the settings that I use to get it to do that. Okay. And that just builds here at the end, and the filter cut off. It just opens up. You can see here, this filter cut off opens up here. Okay. Next in the intro, just some white noise, nothing fancy. Only thing I'm using is this white noise oscillator, band reject, and here's what that sounds like. Okay, here's the EQ. Bus 3 is just a longer reverb than the other bus that I have been showing. I think it was bus 4. So this is just a longer reverb. Okay. So here's that in context. Okay. What else is in this intro? Drum fill. Let's see what this is. VEH3 fill in 128.1. Okay, then I layered it with this. And that, again, it's got some reverb. They're all being sent to, well, at least this one and this one are being sent to bus 21. And then I've got the sausage fattener and LFO tool on it to sidechain it a little bit for when the kick hits. And the sausage fattener just kind of fattens it up. Here's this one. This is a drum fill that I recorded on my Roland drum kit that I have. Okay, and I just automated some panning. Going to reverb. All of these just have a little bit of a low cut on them. Nothing fancy. All together. Let me play that without this. Okay, it's subtle, but that just kind of makes it a little without it peaking hotter. Okay. I get this reverse cymbal. This is not special. Okay. Delay. That's it. Again, just low cut. I took this down just a little bit here. Should cut out a little bit of harshness on it. And let's play all that together. Now that we got, actually there's a couple more things here. This Okay, so I'll actually play this section for you here so you can hear what this next section is that we're getting in. Okay, so this pad here, it's just a simple saw. And here's the processing. I'll show you the notes. Okay, so that's that. EQ. I turn all these off. Here's the EQ. Okay, so you can hear that's definitely helping the sound a little. You can hear how when it's on, it takes away some of that harshness in it. When it's off, it's a lot harsher. This auto filter. This, I've got a ton of automation going on this. And first of which is just the cutoff here. Okay, so this one is just the cutoff. Okay, so the cutoff just builds all the way to the end here. And then I've got this rate. Got the two different rates going for the automation. I've got the coarse and the fine. So here's the coarse. Okay, and then the fine, it goes from 87.409 to 87.614. And what this is doing is it's giving that LFO kind of slow wobble, if you will. This gain is just for automating. Same with this. Okay, and then I've got this stereo spreader thing, which just widens the kind of the mids and highs. So you can hear how that really widens that sound up. And I just automated the low cut here to give it kind of a filter sweep at the end. Okay, and I also automated the delay on it as well. Then I've got this. I was not really doing anything. The gain is just for automation, so there's not a whole lot of processing going on this, but here's the two together. Okay. Fills are the same. This is just a little sample of some rain. Nothing fancy. This is the only new thing that I added to the fill. Okay. Just reverb. A bit of low cut. But this with these does this. Okay. So that section's pretty easy. Not a ton going on that section. This this next section though, there's a little bit more going on. It's the same thing as the intro, same sort of stuff as the intro. The only other thing that I added to this was I added this growl, this little riser, and then this guitar thing. So all this other stuff we've already gone over. So let me play this section. Okay, so let me just go over this. Okay, so this is just a sculpture synth, preset resonant bass. These are the MIDI notes. Then let me show you the EQ. Okay, so that just gives it a little bit of movement left and right. Does the auto panning. Here's the stereo imager from Wave. Subtle. Okay, so bus 6 here is the delay. And you can see I've got the delay build. So let me show you what that sounds like. Okay, so that's what that's doing. This riser. Okay, so this is a sample that I made here. Let me find where's the root note? Okay, so that's what this sounds like on its own. Okay. Unfortunately, I bounced this to audio, so I can't go over how I made this. Fortunately for you, I do have this sound in one of my other tracks that I've done a full song tutorial on. And it's in there. I just don't remember what track it is that it's in. I want to say it might be my track Lightyear. I think that it might be in that track. So you can check out that tutorial, and it should have this, the recreation of how to make this specific sound. But I just bounced it to audio and then used it as a sample so that I could chop it up like this. Okay. And the only thing I did here is I just used a little bit of this Arts Acoustics reverb inside Phalanx, and that's it. And then the gain is just for automation, and then we've got some delay. It's just a triplet delay, and it just does this. Okay, and all it does is it just builds towards the end, and I just do, I automate the pitch up. Okay, so that's all that's doing. Then this growl. Again, okay, so this, again, I can't show you the processing on this specific sound, but here's what it sounds like. Okay, so that's what it's doing. And then what I've done is I have the tremolo, again, doing some panning for me, the auto panning. Sorry. Okay, so if you listen to this in headphones, you'll hear it. This is just giving it a little bit of movement from left to right. And then this is really where things get cool with this. Okay, so I've got this at dotted eighth notes. And doesn't sound that great right now with this. Oops. Okay, but with the whole thing. Okay, you can hear how that really just gives it some movement. It kind of makes it sound like it's doing this. So it's kind of cool. It just gives it something instead of just being flat note. But here's that. Okay, so all this is I believe it's this pad. And I just bounced it to audio and then reversed it and gave me this. Yeah, that's all it is. And then here it's just that fill again. And this is just that clap impact thing that leads into the next section. And here's that next section. Okay, so we'll go over that next. Okay, so first up in this section, you'll see the only thing I did different with the kick is right here. I just changed up the pattern. Okay, and so this is why I have this softer kick here. It's just at a different volume than this one. Like I had said previously, the automation in Logic is pretty terrible, and it just can't keep up with this kick here being so close to this first one on one. If I automated a gain or if I automated volume, it doesn't keep up properly. So it's easier just to do what I've done here. But that's the only difference. Then you'll notice here on the snare comp track, I added this transient master, and I have turned it on during this section. If you notice here, I'll play it during this section. During this section here, there's a lot going on in this section, but it's quieter. This section here has a lot more going on, and the snare gets lost in the mix, and so I turned this on, and it really brings the snare out more, but it doesn't peak in the mix anymore, which is what I love about this transient designer compared to other ones. For instance, the Plugin Alliance one, the SPL Attacker or the Transient Designer, when you boost the attack on either of these, on the Attacker or on the Transient Designer, when you boost those, it boosts the volume as well. So this one by Native Instruments is great because it has this built-in limiter, and it seems to me like it's more of a soft limiter, like a soft clipper. It really is transparent. You can push this thing all the way to the max, and it does not distort. It doesn't sound terrible. This thing does a great job. I absolutely love this Transient Designer. But let me play this section for you real quick so you can kind of hear where the snare sits, and then I'll go to this section so you can hear how the snare sits without that transient transient master on. Okay, so you can still hear the snare really well there. Now if I go to this, listen to how the snare, how far back in the mix the snare sits. So here, I'll turn it on first. Okay, so you can really hear how that makes a big difference in this section to bring that snare out to give it that punch back. So that's all I did with the kick and snare in this section. The hi-hat is going to be the same as the intro hi-hat. The leads, so I've got this first lead here. Okay, so here's the notes. Okay, and here's what I've done in massive. The single oscillator. Okay, so that's what this is doing. Now here's the sound with all this stuff off. These gains are just for automating. Okay, so you can hear the EQ. I took out a lot of this harshness in the top end. That top end with this sound in the mix, it gives the top end way too much overall in the mix. It sounded way too harsh in the mix, so I just cut that stuff out to a reasonable spot where it made this sound sit better in the mix and not sound so harsh. With this off, when it's in the mix, all this high-end stuff, if you watch it on the analyzer, okay, all this top-end stuff here, that is layering with top-end stuff from everything else that's got this top end, and all of that compiled just makes it too harsh. So this sounded better. Let me show you the phaser. Okay, so that's pretty subtle. I forgot to show you. This has a little bit of phaser on it too, and this is the classic tube. But yeah, so this phaser is doing a little bit more. Then I got the bit crusher. Okay, now the way that this is working, this is almost working as kind of like a soft clipper. It helps control the peaks, and it's also giving it just a slight bit of distortion, which is nice. Okay. Here's the overdrive. Okay. So that's that first one. Okay, now this next group here, this next group of instruments, I've got these three that are all being comped to this one track here to make one sound. But I'll go ahead and show you what they sound like together, and then I'll show you each one individually. Okay, so now each one individually does this. Okay, so this first one. Okay, so those are all the settings for that. Here's the notes. Okay. And bring all these up. I know this is clipping, but it adds to the distortion and it actually sounds okay. Clipping isn't always necessarily a bad thing. If clipping adds character to your sound that sounds good, then keep it. Typically you don't want clipping. Clipping is bad. But if it's adding if you've got a distorted sound already and it's adding a character to the sound that you like, then by all means leave it. The EQ is really what makes the biggest difference on this sound. Let me show you this without this stuff on. Okay, so you can hear how this really cleans up that sound. Beforehand, like this. You know, that sounds fine on its own, but it's got a lot of low end, a lot of bassiness. It's got a lot of mids going on. So the way that I EQ'd this really just helps it sit better in the mix. I did these two rather big cuts here with really, really small cues, so that are really tight cues, so that it got rid of a little bit of some harshness in it. I can show you what those sound like here. Okay, so you hear how those are really harsh frequencies. That's why I cut those out. Okay. If I zero both of these. Okay, if you're listening on your monitors or you're listening in good headphones, you'll hear that kind of harshness. It's almost like this really high-pitched, like whistling sound that sounds kind of out of key. And it was really bugging me. And so I just did these big spikes, and you go like this until you find the frequency that's bugging you. Same thing on this. So you just do these kind of sweeps until you find those frequencies that are really, really bothering you. And this is the spot where I found both of those frequencies to be sitting. And so I did really tight cuts, and you can see how, or you can hear how this really cleans up this sound. Okay. Now the Pro Q is just all I did on this was I just did I took out from the sides, the little mid-side EQing on it. And from the sides, I cut out everything below 80 hertz. And then around 5:30, I took another dB out. You're not even really going to hear this. All this is really doing to me is it's really helping clean up these mids just that tiny bit more. And again, this just helped control my level, and it added some distortion to it, which sounded good. And then just a little bit of the reverb. Next layer is this. Okay, now this one and this one I've got panned. So this one's panned left, this one's panned right. I didn't pan them completely. They sounded better when they weren't completely left and right. So this one's at 30 and this one's at 30. Here is this patch. Okay, so that's that patch. All I did on this one was just an EQ. Just did a low cut, didn't need much. This is where, okay, so originally when I first started building this track, this sound right here, this one was my main sound, okay? Now, this sound by itself, it didn't quite cut through the mix the way that I wanted it to. I really liked this sound, but it didn't have that bright quality that the track needed. Now, this is kind of where your ears come into play and experience kind of comes into play, and knowing what sounds need to be where and whatnot, and what kind of frequencies need to be filled. But I originally didn't have either of these, this pulse saw and this hands up. I originally didn't even have those in this track, and all I had was this one. And something was missing. Something just wasn't there. And so I decided, let me try layering this distorted saws. Let me try layering that with some other stuff to see if it helps this section kind of stand out a little bit more. And that's when I, started searching through other sounds and trying to build other sounds that worked. And this was one that I decided to use because it sounded good with this. So let me play you these two together. Okay, so there's nothing really going on this one other than just some gain automation. Same thing with this. The next one was this. Just really big, hands up, super saw-ish. Again, not much going on. I just did a low cut. I took away some of these mids and then took down the highs just a tiny bit here. just to take away some of the harshness. Actually, here, if I put this up the middle, you'll be able to hear that better. Okay, so it just cleans up that bottom end, cleans up that boxiness kind of area, that muddy area. Here's the preset. And let's pan that back. Okay, so now these two together, I'll show you them individually and then with together. Okay, so now here's both of these together. Okay, now with this one, here's what they all sound like. Okay. Now all of these are being fed to this track here. And I have now EQ'd that whole, all three of these tracks together. And compressed them together. Now I did a compression tutorial a couple weeks back. So if you want a little bit more in-depth kind of on why I did what I did on this section, you can check that that tutorial out. I'll explain it a little bit more now, but here's what I did with the EQ. Okay, so for me, this section just sounds a tad bit muddy. And so what I did was I just cleaned up this kind of middle section, these mids, cleaned these up a little bit. Again, there was some harshness that I was hearing in it, and so I did these filter sweeps like I showed you before and did that. So let me show you what I'm talking about with these again. I'll boost these so you can hear. Okay, so now let me zero these out so you can hear the difference. Okay, so it just kind of helps get rid of some of that harshness that I'm hearing. And that's what I did there. Now, the compression, this just helps bring out a little character. Okay, so this helps bring out a little bit of some character in the sound. Let me show you with this off. Okay, so this just kind of glues everything together, and it added some extra character to the sound. There was just something about it that was just really bothering me, and so I added this on to help bring out some character in this sound. And I tried out like 5 or 6 different compressors, so I found one that gave it the sonic quality that I needed, and this is the one that I ended up with. And here's the settings that I used. Okay, so you can see here, before the compression, okay, it's not peaking any higher. Okay, it's not peaking any higher in the mix with this compressor on and with it off. Okay, so I really just added this on there to give this sound a different quality. And it's going to be subtle. You're going to have to pay close attention to hear what this is doing. Okay, so what I noticed this is doing is I feel like this is taking away some of the harshness, and it's giving it a little bit more body. Hopefully that makes some sense. Like I said, I went way more in depth on that compression tutorial, and you can go and watch that if you want some more in depth on that. Next up is this. Okay, so that's that. All I did was just low cut, and I boosted the highs just a little bit. And that's really it for this sound, but together with this, sounds like this. Okay. Next up is this. Okay, so it's kind of like your kind of like an air horn type sound. And this is the preset that I used in Nexus for it. Here's what I did with the EQ. Let me turn all this stuff off here. That doesn't matter. Okay, so this sound, I'm giving it a lot of like this, your mid and mid highs, and you can hear how this really brings this sound out a little bit more. Okay, so when this is off, it's a little thin. Now with it on, it sounds a lot fuller. Okay, here's the compression setting that I use. Okay, now what I felt like this was doing after this is I felt like this gave it a lot more of this kind of mid-high characteristics. I feel like the compression settings that I used on it helped clean up this kind of low-end section a little bit more. And this is what I was trying to talk about a little bit in this compression. The compression tutorial that I did. Compressors can bring out some EQ characteristics in your sounds. They're not always used to just control peaks and whatnot. With the right settings, you can really give your sound some cool characteristics. And then I added this one as well. Okay, now this one's bringing out the highs a lot more. And yes, I can do all this with EQ, but sometimes a compressor adds, to me, a compressor can add better characteristics to your sound than EQ does. I don't know why. It just does. So it's just a matter of kind of trying things. You know, I'll sit here and mess with EQ, and if I'm just not getting things correct, if I'm just not getting things where I need them to be, that's when I'll try a compressor and see what that does, see what kind of characteristics that can add to the sound. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I just have to go and pick a new sound. Next up is this distorted bass. Okay. So it's just a sample, and I've got this loop function going so that I can have a note sustain. And then all I did was do a little low cut and a high cut. And let's see if we can even hear. Yeah, you can hear how that subtly changes it. This really helps. This high cut here really helps clean up some of that high end that doesn't need to be there, because I've got so much high end going on and on all these sounds that I don't need it here on this. And oh, don't know why that's on there. It's not doing anything. This is just white noise. Simple, just this white noise oscillator, low cut filter. That is all that is going on that sound. It's pretty basic, just white noise. The tremolo is just making it go from left to right subtly. And that's all that's doing. And then these drum fills are the same as before. So again, here's that section. Okay, so one thing that I did that I didn't really explain is here, when this comes in, to make room for this, I lowered the volume on these. So this one here, I lowered it by a half dB, which is pretty unnoticeable. This one though, this one, I lowered, let's see, this one's another one that's by half dB. And then this one's by 2. Okay, so in total, this and this on each side are being down by a half, and then this one's down by 2. And then this one, I've got this one going down by 6 dB when this comes in, because these two kind of interfered with each other. But when I dropped it out completely, it sounded weird. So I dropped this one by 6 dB, and then I also rolled it off here towards the end by another 2.5 dB. So by the time this section ends, this has gone down by 8.5 dB, which just really makes this kind of stand out a little bit more. But you'll notice when this comes in, even though this drops by 2 dB, okay, yeah, even though this drops by 2 dB and these dropping by half, you're not even going to notice. But it gives room for this. And you don't notice that drop in the sound because when this comes in, it fills that back in. So that's another good thing for you to learn to do, is to automate volume to make room for new parts that are coming in. Sometimes it's not always good to completely get rid of a sound. Sometimes you just need to bring it way back in the mix, but you still want it there. So that's about it for this track. This break is the same as the first. This is going to be the same as this section. The only different thing that I think that I did on this is right before the drop here, I just changed the fill up. So here's the fill on. Okay, so that's the only thing I did different on this one. It's just this. Okay, so this one. Okay, so I just added this to it. Which got this. That is not the right title for this. This is Vengeance Electro House 3, Fill-ins 128, number 41 is what this is. And this is Fill 32. So that's it. The outro is the same thing as this outro part right here is the same thing as this section minus the toms. And that's really it. So, yeah, hopefully this helps. Hopefully you guys... let me actually... Most important part. Totally almost forgot to go over the mastering stuff. This is, I think, what people care about more than anything. Let me pull all this stuff up. Try and make room for it all. I think the movement that we're seeing here is just from the mic. Okay, but here is... Yeah, if I turn this... Yeah, so that's just from the mic. Here's all the mastering stuff that I did. So first up, got the Pro Q. Now, I did a little bit of some mid-side EQing. And from the mids, I just did a low cut at 30 hertz. Sides at 80. Then I took out a dip here at 550 at 550 hertz. I did a 1.5 dB cut. I boosted this. What the heck? Yeah, I boosted this kind of mid highs at 3,500 hertz. Just by 0.3 dB. And that's all I did as far as the EQing goes. Let me turn this low cut is just for extra precautionary measures. I always have that on here. Let me turn all this other stuff off. The volume will go lower, so just turn your volume up. Because I want you to be able to hear the difference of what this stuff is actually doing. So let me play it. Let me play it from the break or from the drop when it's got most of the stuff going on. Let me turn this on just to give it some extra volume for you. Okay, so that's subtle. And like I said, I always throw this on, just it's always on my mastering chain. Then this stereo imager from Ozone is pretty much just making your mix a little wider. It's giving it a better stereo image. And you can see with band 3 here, I just did a tiny bit of widening, and the high end, I did a tiny bit of widening. I find that those two bands are all I really have to do. I do the rest of the widening with my sounds themselves and delays and all that stuff. So this just adds a little bit of something extra to it. I'll bypass it and unbypass it. You're not going to hear a huge difference. Okay, so you'll notice a difference if you're listening in headphones. You'll hear it kind of widen just a tiny bit. Then I've got this multi-band compressor, which I've gone over before. I like to use my multi-band compressor kind of as an EQ on my mastering channel. I feel like this brings out some character and quality in the sound that's just great. And to be honest, I really like this one that's built into Logic. This compressor is really good. So yeah, here's what this is doing. Okay, so very subtle compression settings. I don't like to have much more than like 1 to 3 dB at most of some compression. You want your attack settings to be not super slow, but not super fast where you're just cutting off every peak. You want your peaks to go through, and then you want it to compress. And so here's the settings that I did for each band. Here's how I EQ'd it. And yeah, that's that. Next up is this T-Rax. This soft clipper is awesome. Highly recommend this. This it's great because you can use it as a straight soft clipper, or you can use it as almost just like a regular limiter. And you can blend the two together. So all the way to the left here on this slope side, this is going to be your soft, like totally soft clipper. And then this side is going to be more of like a hard limiter. And I've got it right in between, and I'm using it kind of like a mix between the two. It's awesome. But I try not to have a ton of gain reduction going on this. This just helps control some of the peaks before it reaches the final limiter. So let me show you what this is doing before it hits the limiter. Okay, so you can see it's not doing a whole heck of a lot. It's not even getting 1 dB worth of gain reduction here. But it's just subtle enough to control those peaks before it gets to the limiter, so that your limiter is not working quite as hard on those peaks. And you get a way better sound, I've found. So then here's what I've done on this, and you'll notice that, you know, I've got anywhere from 0 to at most like 4 or 5 dB worth of gain reduction at times. You probably want to turn your monitors or your headphones back down. Give you some time. Okay. Then these are both just meters. These just help you analyze the mix visually. This multimeter just shows me what's going on with my EQ curves. You want a nice slope. You kind of want it angling down to the right. Okay, so you want it kind of starting here, and you kind of want it to slope down a little bit like this, and you know, you'll get your peaks around 200 where your snare hits and whatnot. But you can see there's no big dips anywhere. There's not any big holes anywhere, and that means that you've got a pretty full spectrum. Then this is just my RMS meter that I used to use. It's this same one that isn't available anymore. I tried using which is really annoying because it's a 32-bit plugin. It's free, but it was 32-bit, and then Plugin Alliance got a hold of this, and now it costs $100. I got it for $50 though, which is great. I found a coupon for like 50% off, which was awesome. So yeah, I got this for $50, and I use it all the time, so it's worth it. But yeah, this just helps me analyze my mix. It helps you analyze the balance, the correlation. It helps you analyze your RMS levels. To me, this one is great. It's the most accurate. It's got all sorts of different settings. It's great because I can have this on, and I can just click this, and I can now check my mix in mono, sides. It's a really great little plugin. Highly recommend it. But for most dance music, now, RMS is just a number. Don't pay too much attention to it. The only time that I like to pay attention to it is if I notice that my RMS levels are way, way off of where they should be. Like if I've got negative 15 RMS or something like that, I know that things are way off. For most dance music, your RMS levels are going to be somewhere around the -6 to -9 range. Anywhere in that range is great. If you can get your mix, I mean, I've seen some tracks that have like -3 RMS and -4 RMS, -5 RMS, and if they still sound good, cool. You just don't want your whole track to be at that. The listener is going to get really fatigued if the entire track is that way. If you've got just your drop kind of peaking at that level, that's fine, because then you've got a break that's going to come after it that's going to let the listener's ears kind of take a break from all that. So try not to pay attention to that too much. Like I said, it's not a huge deal. At the end of the day, you just want to listen to what sounds good. I always A/B my tracks with other tracks, professional tracks, and that for me is where I do most of my metering. I use my ears more than anything, and I'll just kind of solo the professional track and then solo my track, solo their track, solo my track, and listen to characteristics in their track that I need to bring out in my track. Is mine a lot muddier than theirs? Is there a lot more punch in the snare? Is there, are the synths standing out more in their track than in my track? And, I'll A/B it listening to specific elements to get the balance of mine just right. So, once you get your balance right, then it's just a matter of boosting your volume till it matches with a professional track. And if you can't boost yours to the same level as the professional track without yours distorting and sounding like crap, then don't boost it that much. At the end of the day, everything that we listen to music on nowadays kind of automates volume for us. If you've got an iPhone or an iPod or any smartphone that you play music on, most of them have settings that adjust the volume of all your songs to play at the same level. Same thing with DJ software. Even DJ software a lot of times will auto gain your stuff for you. So, it's at the end of the day, don't worry about it. You can just turn the volume up on something. If it's, if it sounds a little bit quieter, turn the volume up on it when your track comes on. I personally don't care. So, I care more about sonic quality than I do loudness. If someone gave me a track that was super, super quiet, but when I turned it up loud enough to make it, at commercial level, if it still sounded good, then cool, who cares? So, anyway, I'm going to end that rant. But yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and hit me up. I'll do my best to answer any questions. Okay, now let me play you the entire finished track.